Robert from Grit Games, doing something a little different today. I'm actually going to share a little bit about the campaign that we just started. We had a person in a group who left, so we're actually because we were down a person. I picked up the mantle for dungeon mastering. We have our new season that's starting. This is season 3, episode 1, called The Fallen Lord. That is out. You can find us. The videos are on YouTube. You can check us out there. And I've been trying to stream on other platforms as well. But yeah, did something a little different than this one. Usually, with the start of the campaign, you think about how do I introduce the player characters. We have the quintessential starting in a tavern, or you bring them together and kind of throw them into an adventure, and it just sort of happens. I did this one a little different way, and I want to kind of share my thought process around it because it's probably not the usual way that you would start a game. So in the first session, I wanted to establish a little bit of the lore of the world and the setting, and give players a view of that without risking their player characters. So what I did instead, and on the first session, they actually didn't need their player characters, but I had them use Morkborg characters. And actually, let me show this first. So you can watch the full episode here. This is the starting one. There's going to be some follow-ons where they actually start playing their player characters. But if you want to take the same format, you can watch it from start to end. It's available on YouTube. And I want to share these little videos here. So I was really excited to use this guy. This is the Monster Hunter, DeVilho. And we set up a nice little table to show it. We have a nice setup here with a board game table, and it had all sorts of terrain to put down. It's always fun to find like a really good way of doing that. And to give you a sense of what this table looked like, there's the Devil Ho for Monster Hunter. There's a bunch of kind of characters in the middle, and that's kind of how we started. And I'd use a cross between like the digital and the physical, and we went back and forth between the two. And for the setup, actually, let me show this guy real quick. So this is what this figure looks like. It's massive. This is the size of the character relative to this figure. So part of the world is this idea that there's these giant monsters. We called them behemoths that were being commandeered by different factions within the space. I wanted to give characters a chance to encounter one of these without the risk of a TPK, getting their whole party killed off of it, because these things are really powerful. So what we did instead, here is the character sheet for this. I call it a world leader here, but these are behemoths. They are massive. They have multiple traits. They have legendary actions. These are basically like big bosses that they're going to be fighting throughout the campaign. And if you'd like this little PDF to run one yourself, let me know in the comments. I'll send you a copy of it. But the idea is I wanted to start players with weaker characters and have them encounter this. I actually inverted the formula with the normal encounter interaction with the monster. Instead of having like really powerful players and maybe fighting multiple monsters, I actually had the players start with multiple characters, very weak characters, and fight one of these big bads. So what they came to find out very, very quickly is one of these big bads can slam and kill their character in one hit, even before they have a chance really to do much. So the tail sweeps, the multi-attacks that are happening here, the bite actions, this idea of having these legendary actions that were happening. I ended up not using any like the acid throw attacks or like any distant stuff. It was plenty just to have this thing run around and chomp at people. But the idea is they could pick, they were a warband, and they each got 3 low-level Morkborg characters. And I'll show this real quick. Like if you're interested in Morkborg, like a simplified version, it's a D20 system. Works great for quick generation of characters. The stats are a little different, and attacks and combat are a little different, but that's fine. We actually did sort of a munch between fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons and just use these character sheets. This is an auto generator you can find online. Anyway, I made a set of these characters. There's about 15 or 16 here in all. Auto generated them and had them ready to go in front of players, and they could riff off of the description of the character. And what they started with is 3 available to them, but introduction with one of them. So they started off with one of those characters, and they would lay in to this character. We have a lot of folks in my career that love to role play and do a bunch of different aspects of it. And it was very easy for them to kind of slip into one of these. Now, what they discovered is these characters, they have this, for example, this one has 1 hit point. This one has 7 hit points. They don't have a lot of hit points. This guy is doing like 60, 10 plus 10 damage. So the goal wasn't to kill something in combat. And actually, I think it's a better idea not to have the goal necessarily just to wipe out your enemies. You should have something else that's happening, a MacGuffin or something that you can go after on the side. So what we did instead is they were a crew that were working to get the eggs of this beast, and they were working for one of the armies that was kind of building up the area. The idea is that this army is going to, commandeer these creatures, maybe hatch some of their own and incorporate them into their army. But they needed a way to get them. These are like feral monster creatures. So they're going to actually have these weak players go in and do the dirty work for them. Now, what the players discovered, and they discovered this very quickly, because if you watch the encounter, a couple of them, die outright as they run towards the behemoth. But then they use their secondary and tertiary characters to go in and actually steal the eggs out of the nest. So effectively, instead of a combat, this was a puzzle encounter. And the puzzle was, how do I get these eggs out using my limited economy with these throwaway characters? Also, for fun, when a character died, especially these low level characters, I had a lighter on the side, and we actually burned those character sheets, these little printout workboard character sheets, as soon as they died, because the hits were doing 40 plus damage. It just annihilates the character. But it really hammered home that these are throwaway characters. But what the players discovered is they could use some of the characters basically to harangue and hang up the big bad, the monster, and then use the other ones to go in, grab the eggs, and accomplish the mission. Also, my players understood the way that these characters were situated, kind of the rules of, and motif of Morkborg is that these are actually kind of unsavory characters. So they really layered into that, and actually sort of mid fight, if you watch it, they ended up starting attacking each other to try to get the egg, from the other persons, and they ended up actually killing the warlord that hired them and then going back to the town. All right. So one of the threads that I wanted to accomplish was, instead of me inventing the big bad for the campaign, I'm going to have the players do it. And the person that comes out on top through this adventure is going to be the one that becomes the big bad that they're going to fight later. Now, I haven't revealed this yet to my players. They're going to discover it. The other cool thing is there was one player who came out on top now became like the next warlord, kind of assumed the role of the prior warlord. The rest of them who survived are captains within their army. So those are now fodder for future episodes and encounters where they're facing off against some of these captains that are rising through the ranks. And in fact, these are prior characters that they had played earlier, and they established them, their personality. They ripped off some of their powers and traits. You got a feel for some of my characters renamed, some of their own characters here. So we're going to preserve that and move that forward. And then I'm going to be using these characters and advance them a little bit so that there are good adversaries for the players to encounter later. Now, the third part, if you go to our website on Crit Games, you go to gameplay, you can actually find the season 3. And if you go underneath season 3, we have the Fallen Warlord that's available. If you go there, it has the write-up of the adventure. I try to do my adventures in kind of 3 parts. So the first part was going after the behemoth. And then the way I go about DMing is I sort of set up the situation, and then there might be some story beats to hit. Um, but how they succeed and get to that point, it's up to the characters to figure out. One of the things that needed to happen was the death of the warlord, and luckily that happened with my players doing it. There's many ways this could have happened, but that's the way they chose, which was perfect because it lined up the next parts. In Act Two, players went back to the camp. This is the army camp. There was a eulogy for the fallen warlord. And they coronated the new leader of their group, which happened to be one of the characters who came out on top, one of the ones that came back with one of the eggs and presented it back to the tribe. They needed a warlord and somebody to lead the group, and this particular character rose to the top and had some traits for it. All right, so that's the setup. The third part, and feel free to riff on this on your own campaign, but the idea was I wanted to expose the world a little bit and give a sense of the size of the world. So I had a map that I created for it, and I put that on the digital display, and I had a way of doing the fog of war. So what I had them do is, this actually went forward in time a little bit, but they built up an army and played a little mini game where they'd go around and they would gather up armies and build the enemy group. And the leader, the person who came out on top on the prior one, was the king, or the warlord king, that was heading this up. So they'd be able to make all the different decisions. They were, put on top, and then all of their captains helped them through this. And as they would come across different towns, some of them would be, relational to their own group. So they would decide to join them. We had basically it did two things. We didn't really do much in the way of combat. Again, we're using like little risk pieces to move around the world, and they're represented on the map. But the purpose of this was to show the expanse of the world and kind of establish the areas of the world, the domains of the world. And actually, the players were doing it. It wasn't me. So the players decided, kind of how far they would go. And there was a series of what I would call social encounters that were set up. So they had this view of the world, and then I would impose to them, to the team, these different kind of social dilemmas that would happen, something they would have to decide, and that sort of solidified what would happen in their expanse and their sort of rise to power. Definitely watch the full episode if you're interested in kind of seeing how that built on it, but give you a sense of it. There were you're passing by hamlets, and some of these hamlets are part of the enemy nation, but they're not necessarily an army. So do you allow pillaging of your army? Do you allow your troops to go in and steal food and take it? If you do, you might get some resentment. If you don't, then you're gonna have some trouble with your army in this area. Also, you can introduce traders. So they were busy in their social encounters of commandeering and getting folks to join them, and they actually convinced some of the enemy to join them. But then they faced upon with dissenters later, somebody that was sort of vying for authority against the warlord, and they had like a social encounter with that individual. The whole idea was try to provide morally or ethically ambiguous situations where they were forced to make a choice, and it kind of set them down a path. Now, my players realized very quickly that in this world, if they didn't do certain things, they wouldn't succeed. So they went ahead and did it. And they also kind of recognized that the characters that they were playing might have been a little more unsavory. Now, in this world, it's more of a matter of order versus chaos than like a clear kind of moral basis. And then we'll kind of see how this plays out. But this was a really nice way of exposing the players to the world, putting their not their players at risk, but putting other things at risk, and then whatever survived from that would move forward into the world and actually become something in the world. The other thing I did is that as I came across things, we established the story. So I had, a list of names and a list of locations, and we would roll up at random as they discovered something, what was the name of this location, and then kind of role play a small scene that happened on top of it. But all this kind of came together in a way that was very unique and not a normal way that you would start a D&D game. There are games where they start with level 0 characters, see who survive. It kind of vibes off of that, from a classic dungeon crawl perspective. But this one again was a little different, and I'm looking forward to the day that I can bring back the Butcher King, who was the great warlord in this one, and some of the captives into this world, into this space. So stay tuned for the next episodes. We'll see what happens. The next one is actually going to play a little bit more into our player characters, learn who they are. We already have some lore in the world established. We already know that there's this brimming conflict that's happening. We already know a little bit about the world, how it's situated, and the idea of gods in this world who are playing into this, and these creatures, these giant behemoths that are walking the land, and they've actually encountered them before. They have some history and some lore and some context before they, are going to come across this as a player, and having had a little more experience to kind of build up to those types of encounters. It's a great way of foreshadowing the world and allowing the players to build it for you. If you were interested in some of this content, if you'd like the behemoth character sheet to run it yourself, this is one you can drop into any campaign. There's some plot hooks available here if you just want to, drop it into your own scenario, and you can use the sheet here. Or if you'd like a sampling of these workboard characters, either drop into your game or even run workboard if you're interested in running that specifically, give me a comment. Happy to share these out. Try that out in your own game. Let me know how that works. And in any event, looking forward to the next episodes, kind of seeing how some of these threads that were seeded by the characters are going to develop further. This is Robert from crickgames.com. Let me know if you like this style of content. This is sort of like a battle report or like a wrap up from one of the episodes, kind of gives some of my thoughts behind the scenes. But let me know. And feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube to catch the next one.